The sky above Lake Crescent, Washington, was the color of silver smoke. Thick, restless clouds pressed low over the water, whispering against the pine trees that lined the highway. It should have been a perfect spring afternoon, yet the air was heavy, charged, as if holding its breath for something it knew was coming. Emily Carter didn't look back. The hem of her wedding dress, torn and streaked with mud, snagged on the brush as she stumbled through the forest's edge. Her heart slammed against her ribs like it was trying to escape too. The lace bodice clung to her like a trap, suffocating. Every step was agony in her bare feet, but the thought of turning back, of facing the altar, the lies, and the man waiting there, was worse than any pain. She could still hear the church bells echoing faintly through the hills, carried by the wind. They sounded hollow now, mocking. "Keep going," she whispered to herself, breathless. "Just keep going." The dirt road curved sharply toward the lake. She didn't know where she was heading, only that she needed distance. Away from her father's expectations, away from the cold eyes of Thomas Hale, the man she'd almost married, away from everything that told her who she was supposed to be. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, droplets sliding down her face like tears she refused to cry. She lifted her skirt and ran faster, the world blurring into motion and noise until her body gave out. When she stumbled, it was into headlights. A truck skidded to a stop, tires screeching against wet gravel. For a moment, she thought it was Thomas's car, that he had found her already. But then a man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, his silhouette backlit by the white beam. "You trying to get yourself killed?" His voice cut through the storm, low and rough. Emily froze, breathing hard. The man came closer, the rain painting dark streaks across his black t-shirt. His hair was wet, sticking to his forehead, and his eyes, God, his eyes were unlike anything she'd seen. Too pale, almost silvery, catching every flicker of lightning. I didn't mean to." "You're bleeding," he interrupted. His gaze dropped to her foot, where a shard of glass had embedded itself, just below her ankle. He crouched down, movements quiet, deliberate. "You shouldn't be out here." She took a step back, wary. "I don't need help." He looked up at her then, rain dripping from his lashes. "You're standing in the middle of nowhere, wearing a wedding dress, barefoot, in the rain." His voice softened, though it still held a dangerous edge. "Trust me, sweetheart, you need help." The word sweetheart sent a chill down her spine, not because of its tone, but because there was something ancient in the way he said it, something that felt more instinct than habit. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she murmured. "Emily Carter." He nodded, as if he already knew. "I'm Ryan." He stood and gestured toward the truck. "You're freezing. Get in before you catch pneumonia." "I don't know you." "You don't have to." His lips curved faintly, but it wasn't a smile. It was a warning. "You just have to decide if you'd rather keep standing here, waiting for whoever you're running from." The world seemed to pause between them. The rain hissed softly on the road. Somewhere deep in the woods, an animal howled, a low, guttural sound that raised the hairs on her neck. Emily hesitated, then limped toward the truck. The cab was warm, the engine humming softly. A faint scent of pine and smoke clung to the leather seats. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering as Ryan drove down the empty road, headlights slicing through the mist. "Where were you headed?" he asked, eyes fixed on the winding turns. "I don't know." "Away." He gave a quiet nod. "Sometimes that's enough." She studied him from the corner of her eye. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a small lakeside town. There was a tension in him, coiled beneath the surface, like a man used to running or hunting. They drove in silence for a while. The forest thickened around them, trees closing in. Lightning flashed across the lake, and for an instant his reflection in the windshield seemed to ripple, his eyes glowing unnaturally bright, like a wolf's caught in moonlight. She blinked, and the illusion was gone. "Do you live around here?" she asked. "Close enough." "What were you doing out in the storm?" "Looking for someone," he said simply. Her pulse stuttered. "Someone like me?" He turned his head, and there was that faint half-smile again, both alluring and unsettling. "No, Emily. Not like you." She didn't ask more. Something told her she didn't want the answer. The rain eased as they reached a small cabin hidden behind the trees. It was rustic, weathered, with a porch light flickering like a dying heartbeat. Ryan parked and stepped out, rounding to open her door. "You can stay here until the storm passes," he said. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not." His gaze caught hers again, steady, unblinking. "There are worse things in these woods than me." Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and smoke. A fire burned low in the hearth, casting a soft orange glow. Emily's soaked dress clung to her skin as she stood by the flames, trembling. Ryan handed her a towel and an oversized flannel shirt. "There's a bathroom through there," he said. "You can change." When she emerged, barefoot and wrapped in his shirt, he was standing by the window, looking out toward the forest. His posture was tense, as if listening to something far beyond the walls. "Ryan," she said quietly, "you keep looking outside. Is someone out there?" He didn't turn around. "Not someone." Lightning flickered again, illuminating the trees. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement, dark figures slipping between the pines, low to the ground. Ryan finally faced her, eyes bright, expression unreadable. "You should get some rest." She nodded, too exhausted to argue. He motioned to the small couch, and she sank into it, watching the firelight dance across the room. As sleep tugged at her, she heard him murmur something under his breath, a language she didn't recognize, soft, guttural, almost animal. Then came another sound outside, a howl, deep, resonant, close. Emily's eyes snapped open. Ryan was gone from the window. Her heartbeat spiked. She rose, stepping closer to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Another howl answered, this one sharper, nearer. When the door creaked open behind her, she gasped. Ryan stood there, drenched again, chest heaving, eyes glowing silver in the dim firelight. "Emily," he said, voice trembling with something wild and desperate, "whatever you do, don't go outside tonight." And for the first time, she realized what she had seen in his reflection wasn't a trick of the storm. It was the truth waiting beneath his skin. She hadn't escaped her wedding. She had run straight into the Lycan's trap. Morning crept over Lake Crescent, like a secret being whispered through fog. The storm had passed, but the world still looked bruised. Mist clinging to the water, trees dripping with rain, and the cabin half lost in gray light. Emily woke to the faint crackle of the fire and the smell of coffee, her body heavy, her mind fogged by dreams she couldn't quite recall, shadows moving in the woods, eyes watching her through the glass. Ryan was at the counter, silent as he poured steaming black coffee into 2 chipped mugs. His back was broad beneath a dark gray t-shirt, his movements careful, deliberate, like a man always aware of the space around him. "You sleep at all?" he asked without turning around. "A little," she lied. Her voice was soft, raw from crying she didn't remember doing. "You?" "Not much." He handed her a mug. Their fingers brushed, and it startled her, not because of the touch, but because of the warmth that shot through her, deep and sharp. It was more than physical heat. It was something magnetic, instinctive, and it frightened her. "Thank you," she murmured, looking away. They sat across from each other at the small wooden table. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was thick, alive, full of things neither dared to say. "I should go back," Emily said at last. "People will be looking for me." Ryan's eyes flicked up. "You sure that's what you want?" She hesitated. The thought of her father's disappointed glare, of Thomas's cold smile as he whispered, "You'll learn to love me," made her stomach twist. "No," she admitted quietly, "but I can't just disappear." He studied her for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "You'd be surprised how easy disappearing can be." Something in his tone made her shiver. Outside, the mist began to lift, revealing the dark gleam of the lake beyond the trees. Ryan stood and reached for his jacket. "I need to check something down by the shore." "Stay inside." "Why?" He looked at her, his gaze sharp and unreadable. "Because last night wasn't just a storm." Then he was gone. Emily sat in the silence, the sound of her heartbeat filling the room. She tried to tell herself he was just strange, maybe a recluse, maybe dangerous, maybe both. But deep down, something told her there was more. She wandered the cabin, trying to piece together who he was. There were almost no personal items, no photographs, no books, no clutter. Only a map pinned to the wall, covered in red markings that circled the forest in wide loops. Each circle had dates beside it. April 17th, May 2nd, June 11th. The most recent one was yesterday. When Ryan returned, his clothes were damp again, his expression grim. "You went outside," he said flatly, glancing at the map. "I just looked around." His jaw tightened. "I told you to stay inside." "I don't take orders," she shot back, surprising herself with the sharpness in her voice. "Not from you. Not from anyone anymore." For a moment, they stood there, her chest heaving, his eyes locked on hers, silver glinting faintly in the dim light. Then something in him softened. He stepped closer, voice low. "I know what it's like to run, Emily. I can see it on you. The way you don't look people in the eye for too long. The way your hands shake when you lie." She swallowed hard. "And what are you running from?" He smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Myself." The way he said it made her stomach twist again. Later that afternoon, Ryan offered to drive her into town, a small place called Port Angeles, about 30 minutes down the road. "You can call someone," he said. "Get your bearings." The drive was quiet. The road wound through endless pine forest, sunlight breaking in thin shards through the branches. Emily caught herself glancing at him more than once. There was a wildness about him that both frightened and fascinated her, like standing too close to the edge of something vast and alive. In town, she borrowed Ryan's phone outside a small diner. Her hands trembled as she dialed. Her father answered on the second ring. "Emily, where the hell are you?" She froze, heart thudding. "I'm safe." "Do you have any idea what you've done? Thomas has been calling every sheriff's office in the state. You've humiliated this family." "I couldn't marry him, Dad." "You don't have a choice. You made a commitment." Her throat tightened. A commitment to what? To being miserable? To pretending? The silence on the line was colder than his words. "You get home tonight, Emily, or I'll come find you myself." The call cut off. She stood there trembling, the phone heavy in her hand. When she turned, Ryan was leaning against the truck, watching her. He didn't ask what had happened. He didn't need to. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get you something to eat." Inside the diner, the air smelled of bacon grease and coffee. Locals filled the booths, fishermen, truckers, a few tourists. Ryan seemed out of place here, too sharp against the soft edges of small-town life. People looked at him, then looked away quickly. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, poured them coffee. "Haven't seen you in a while, Ryan," she said. "You keeping out of trouble?" "Trying to," he said. Emily raised an eyebrow. That sounded unconvincing. He smiled faintly. "It's not my specialty." They ate in silence for a while. Then she leaned closer. "Last night, what did you mean when you said there are worse things in the woods than you?" He didn't look up. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." He set down his fork, eyes lifting to hers. "You ever heard the stories about this lake? The disappearances?" She frowned. "Urban legends? Not legends." His voice dropped. "Warnings." The diner door opened suddenly, and a gust of cold air swept through. A man stepped inside, tall, clean-cut, wearing a dark suit that didn't belong in a logging town. His eyes found Ryan instantly. Ryan stiffened. The man gave a thin smile. "Didn't think I'd find you here." "Guess you didn't look hard enough," Ryan said quietly. Emily looked between them, confusion rising. "You know him." The stranger's gaze slid to her, lingering too long. "You shouldn't be with him." Ryan rose, his chair scraping against the floor. "Leave, Marcus." "You can't keep hiding what you are," the man said, voice cold. "They'll smell her on you." The air in the diner changed. The few remaining customers fell silent, uneasy. "Get out," Ryan growled. Marcus smiled again, too calm. "You can't protect her forever." Then he turned and walked out, the bell above the door jingling softly behind him. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. "Ryan, what the hell was that?" He ran a hand through his hair, eyes distant. "We need to go." "Ryan." "Now, Emily." The drive back to the cabin was silent, tension humming like static in the air. By the time they arrived, dusk had fallen again. The forest seemed to press closer, the shadows thicker. Inside, Emily stood by the fire, arms wrapped around herself. "You're going to tell me what's going on," she said. "Who that man was. What he meant." Ryan turned slowly toward her, eyes burning silver in the dim light. "I told you before," he said quietly. "There are worse things in these woods than me." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And one of them just found us." The night was black and wet, and the lake outside the cabin shimmered like a blade under the thin moon. Emily sat by the fire, hugging her knees to her chest, her mind racing. Ryan hadn't spoken since they returned. He paced like an animal caged too long, silent, alert, his body wound tight, as if waiting for a signal she couldn't hear. Finally, she broke the silence. "Ryan, who was that man?" He stopped pacing, jaw tight. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned, his voice low. "Marcus. He's my brother." Emily blinked. "Your brother?" Ryan nodded once, eyes distant. "He's the reason I left. The reason I stay hidden." "What did he mean, about what you are?" Ryan exhaled slowly and sat across from her. The firelight threw amber light over his face, carving it into shadows. "You should be afraid of me, Emily. You should have run the moment you saw me." "I've been running all my life," she whispered. "I'm tired of it." His eyes softened then, just barely. "You deserve truth, even if it hurts." Outside, the wind howled through the pines, rattling the windows. Ryan's gaze flicked toward the forest before returning to her. "I wasn't born like this. It happened the night Marcus and I were caught in a storm out by the ridge. Something found us, a pack, hunting under the full moon. We should have died. But they didn't kill us. They changed us." Emily's breath caught. "You're saying you're—" "Lycan," he said, the word falling heavy in the air. "Not a myth. Not a curse. A bloodline now. Half man, half beast." She stared at him, shaking her head. "That's impossible." Ryan's lips curved into something halfway between pain and acceptance. "I used to think so too." Lightning flickered outside, and for a second, she saw something shimmer beneath his skin, his pupils narrowing, muscles tightening, veins along his arms glowing faintly beneath the surface. He looked away, fighting it. "Marcus embraced it," he said. "He believes we're meant to rule what's left of this wilderness, hunt freely, take what we want. I refused. I left, and he's never forgiven me." Emily rose slowly, stepping closer. "So he's here. For you. For both of us," Ryan said quietly. "You shouldn't have been with me in that diner. Now he's caught your scent." "My scent," she whispered, confused and trembling. Ryan met her gaze, his voice breaking. "Once they smell someone tied to me, they don't stop until they have them." Her breath hitched. "Why?" "Because it's how they make you weak. How they make you choose." The wind outside grew harsher, a mournful wail rolling off the lake. Ryan grabbed a duffel bag from under the bed and began packing, flashlight, ammo, a hunting knife that gleamed in the firelight. "Ryan," Emily said, her voice trembling, "I can't just disappear again." He looked up at her, his expression raw. "You already did." They drove through the night, headlights cutting through the fog. The forest was endless, whispering secrets they couldn't hear. Emily stared out the window, the reflection of her own pale face looking ghost-like in the glass. "If you're a Lycan," she said softly, "what happens to you when the moon's full?" Ryan's grip tightened on the wheel. "I lose control. For a few hours, there's nothing human left. That's the price." "And it's tonight, isn't it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. They stopped at an old ranger station, long abandoned. The roof sagged, and ivy crawled up the porch like veins. Inside, it smelled of wood rot and dust. Ryan tossed her a flashlight. "Stay inside no matter what you hear. Promise me." "Ryan, don't." He turned suddenly, his hands gripping her shoulders. His eyes were bright, desperate. "Promise me, Emily." She nodded, tears threatening. "I promise." He stepped back, breathing hard. Good. Lock the door. Don't open it until sunrise. Then he was gone, swallowed by the night. The forest erupted with sound. A single, sharp howl rose in the distance, long, aching, and furious. It was followed by others. A pack. Emily stood by the door, flashlight shaking in her hand. She could feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, the raw energy of something wild moving just beyond the trees. She pressed her palms against her ears, but the sound still reached her. Snarls, crashes, the splintering of wood. Then came a scream, deep, inhuman, and full of pain. She couldn't stay put. Ignoring every instinct, she grabbed the flashlight and pushed the door open. The wind nearly knocked her back, thick with rain and the metallic scent of blood. She followed the sound, stumbling through the undergrowth until she reached a clearing lit by the fractured moon. What she saw stole the breath from her chest. Two massive creatures were locked in combat, wolves, but not. They stood upright, their forms twisted with muscle and fury. One was black as midnight, the other gray with streaks of silver. The gray one, Ryan, was bleeding, his claws glinting in the moonlight. The other creature lunged, slamming him into the ground with a snarl. "Marcus!" Ryan growled, voice warped but still his. "You should have stayed with your kind," Marcus hissed, teeth bared. "Now she'll die for your mistake." Emily screamed, and both creatures turned. For an instant their eyes, one pair silver, the other golden, met hers. Ryan's voice tore through the clearing. "Run, Emily!" But she didn't move. Something inside her refused to. She grabbed a fallen branch, swinging it uselessly, shouting his name. The distraction was enough. Ryan lunged, knocking Marcus off balance, teeth sinking into his brother's shoulder. The forest exploded with snarls and thunder. When it was over, Marcus lay still, his form shifting back into that of a man, his chest barely rising. Ryan staggered to his feet, human again, blood streaking his face. Emily ran to him. "Ryan!" He stopped her with a look. "Don't touch me." "Why?" she whispered. His body trembled, veins dark beneath his skin. "I can't control it yet. Not after fighting. The moon's still too strong." She hesitated, tears streaking her cheeks. "Then what do I do?" He met her gaze, his voice breaking. "Stay away from me." She shook her head. "I won't leave you." He took a step back, every muscle in his body quivering. "You don't understand. If you stay, I'll hurt you. I won't mean to, but I will." Her breath hitched. "Then let me help you." "You already have," he said, eyes full of sorrow. "You made me remember what being human felt like." Before she could answer, he turned and ran into the darkness, vanishing into the forest's heart. Emily sank to the ground, sobbing, the rain washing his blood from her hands. When dawn came, the forest was silent again. The only proof of what had happened were claw marks carved deep into the trees, and the faint echo of his voice in her mind. But as the sun rose over the lake, she saw something glinting near the water, a pendant, silver and familiar, Ryan's. And behind it, in the soft mud by the shore, a single set of footprints. Human. He was still alive. But somewhere deep in the woods, another howl answered the morning. Not his. The forest had changed. It no longer felt like a refuge. It breathed like something alive, something watching. Every branch, every whisper of wind carried a trace of him. Ryan. 3 days had passed since the fight. Emily had stayed by the lake, sleeping in the ranger station, surviving on stale food and hope. She searched the woods every morning, calling his name until her voice cracked. Each night, she lit a small fire by the shore, hoping the light might draw him back. But only the wolves answered. On the 4th morning, the rain came again, thin, cold, and constant. Emily woke to find new footprints in the mud outside the cabin. They weren't Ryan's. They were heavier, deeper, and there were more than one set. Her heart lurched. Someone, or something, was hunting. She packed what little she had and moved fast, following the trail toward the lake. The air smelled of pine and wet stone. Every sound seemed magnified. The crunch of her steps, the caw of a distant raven, the wind through the moss-covered trees. When she reached the clearing where the brothers had fought, the ground was scarred and blackened. The The scent of blood had faded, replaced by damp earth. Yet there, beside the riverbank, she saw it. A shredded piece of flannel. Ryan's shirt. "Ryan," she whispered, clutching it to her chest. "You shouldn't have come back here." The voice came from behind her, rough, low, unfamiliar. Emily turned slowly. A man stood in the shadows, tall and gaunt, with long dark hair and eyes that gleamed amber in the dim light. His clothes were torn, his skin marked with claw scars. "Who are you?" she asked, stepping back. He smiled, though it wasn't kind. "The one who should have finished what Marcus started." Her pulse jumped. "You're one of them." He stepped forward. "Marcus was our alpha. When he fell, the pack scattered. We've been hunting what's left of his bloodline. You led us right to him. I don't know where he is." "Liar." His voice was a growl now, not quite human. "He'll come for you. He can't help it. You're his tether." Before she could run, a blur of motion cut through the trees, a flash of gray and silver. Ryan slammed into the man, sending him crashing into the mud. "Run, Emily," he shouted. But she didn't move. She couldn't. The sight of him, alive, breathing, wild, froze her. His face was streaked with dirt and blood, his eyes burning silver in the gloom. The stranger lunged again, claws slicing through the air, but Ryan met him mid-strike, their bodies crashing into the river. The water exploded around them, dark and cold. Emily stumbled forward, screaming his name, but before she could reach the bank, another figure appeared, a woman this time, with tangled blonde hair and eyes like liquid gold. "Don't interfere," the woman said, her voice smooth, dangerous. "This is pack business." "I don't care about your pack." Emily cried. "He'll die." The woman tilted her head. "He's already dead, little bride. You just haven't buried him yet." Something inside Emily snapped. She grabbed a rock from the ground and swung it wildly, striking the woman across the temple. The blow sent her staggering, giving Emily just enough time to race to the water's edge. Ryan surfaced, gasping, his arm locked around the throat of his attacker. The river churned with fury, the moon's pale reflection twisting on its surface. "Ryan!" Emily cried, reaching for him. Their eyes met, as wild, desperate, human for only a moment. "Go! I won't leave you again." The other Lycan twisted in his grasp, snarling, claws sinking into Ryan's side. Ryan roared, the sound shaking through the trees. With one final surge, he shoved the creature beneath the water, holding him there until the river went still. Then silence. Emily waded into the water, pulling Ryan toward the shore. His skin was cold, his breath ragged. "You shouldn't have come," he said weakly. "You knew I would." He managed a faint, broken smile. "Yeah, I did." She pressed her hand against his wound. Blood welled between her fingers. "You need help." "Too late," he murmured. "The pack won't stop. Marcus's death broke the code. Now they'll come for me, and for you." "Then we'll run," she said fiercely. "We'll leave Washington, disappear, start over." He laughed softly, a sound like pain. "You think I haven't tried? Wherever I go, the moon follows." The woman Emily had struck was gone when she turned back to look. Only the forest remained, still and waiting. Ryan's breathing slowed. "There's something I have to tell you." "Don't," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're going to be okay." He reached for her hand, his fingers trembling. "You asked me once what happens when the moon is full. I told you I lose control." She nodded, crying harder. "I know." His eyes found hers, glassy now. "That's not the worst part. When we change, our instincts bind to whoever we love." Emily froze. "Bind?" He nodded. "It's a bond written in blood. It protects them. But if one dies..." Her throat closed. "Ryan, don't." "The other follows," he whispered. The word struck her like a blade. "No, you're not dying. You hear me." But his eyes were already drifting closed. Emily pressed her forehead against his, sobbing. "I won't let you go. Not now." For a moment, the forest held its breath. Then movement. A rustle in the brush. Footsteps. Ryan's body tensed in her arms, the silver in his eyes flickering weakly. "They're here." Figures emerged from the shadows, 3, 4, maybe more. Lycans, their shapes blurring between man and beast, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Emily rose slowly, shielding Ryan with her body. "You'll have to go through me." A low chuckle came from one of them. "That can be arranged." Before the creature could lunge, Ryan moved, faster than she thought possible. He rose, staggering, then straightened, the silver light flooding back into his eyes. "Get away from her," he growled. And then he changed. It wasn't like before. It was quicker, sharper, the transformation ripping through him like fire. Bones cracked, skin shifted, fur burst through muscle. When he looked up again, he was no longer human, but he was hers. He tore through the pack with impossible fury, each strike echoing through the forest like thunder. Blood and moonlight mingled until Emily couldn't tell where man ended and monster began. When it was over, the clearing was silent again. Only the sound of the river remained. Ryan collapsed to his knees, his body half-shifted, trembling. Emily ran to him. "Ryan, please." His voice came out broken, animal. "Go now." "I can't." He looked at her then, his expression torn between love and agony. "If you stay, I'll finish what they started." The meaning hit her like cold water. He couldn't control the hunger anymore. The bond between them was pulling him apart. She stepped closer anyway, cupping his face. "Then do it. I'm not running again." His breath hitched, eyes wide with terror and awe. "Emily." Her lips trembled. "If this is the end, let it be ours." For one heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you," he whispered. And as the full moon broke through the clouds, everything went white. When Emily opened her eyes, the world was silent. The rain had stopped. The trees no longer whispered. The moon hung pale and distant over the lake, and a thin mist curled along the ground like breath from a sleeping giant. She was lying on cold earth, her wedding ring half buried beside her. Her body ached, but she was alive. And Ryan was gone. At first, she thought it was a dream. The blood, the fight, his words, all of it fading like smoke. But when she looked down, she saw claw marks carved into the soil near where she'd fallen, and her heart knew the truth. He had changed completely, and to save her, he had vanished into the wild. "Ryan," she whispered into the dawn, her voice breaking. "Please." The only answer was the rustle of the forest. She spent the morning searching, her bare feet numb from the cold. His tracks led into the pines, then down toward the lake. She followed until they simply stopped. No blood, no body, no sign of struggle. It was as if he had melted back into the earth that had cursed him. By noon, she stumbled back to the cabin. The fire was dead. The air smelled faintly of smoke and pine, and on the table lay something that hadn't been there before. Ryan's silver pendant, the one she'd found by the lake days ago. But now, a thin thread of red ribbon was tied through its chain. Her heart twisted. He'd been here. She sank into the chair and held the pendant tight. "If you're still out there," she whispered, "don't give up on being human." The days blurred after that. She stayed near the lake, repairing the cabin, waiting. Sometimes, at night, she thought she saw eyes in the trees, pale and watching, but never close enough to touch. Once she heard a howl rise from the distant ridge. Not a cry of hunger, but of grief. Weeks passed. Then, one gray morning, the world shifted again. Emily had gone into town for the first time since the fight. Her reflection in the diner's window startled her, thinner, sharper, her hair streaked with wild strands of silver. She'd stopped wearing her wedding ring. The waitress from before gave her a wary smile. "You still up by Crescent?" she asked. Emily nodded. "Strange things out there. Folks say they hear howling some nights. You might want to move closer to town." Emily smiled faintly. "I'm used to strange." As she left the diner, something caught her eye. A newspaper left on the counter. The headline read, "Local Wildlife Rescue Expands Territory Near Lake Crescent." Below it was a photo. A man in a dark jacket, his head bowed, standing beside a tranquilized wolf being lifted onto a stretcher. The caption read, "Ryan Hale, Wildlife Specialist." Her breath caught. It couldn't be. But she knew that name. She knew the curve of his shoulders, The way his hands looked when they were gentle instead of fierce. He was alive. She dropped the paper, heart hammering, and ran. By the time she reached the lake, dusk had settled. The water shimmered gold under the sinking sun. A figure stood on the far side of the shore, near the line of pines, tall, still, watching. "Ryan!" she shouted. He didn't move. She waded into the water, breathless. "Ryan, it's me. You don't have to hide anymore." He took a slow step forward. Even from across the distance, she could see it, his eyes. No longer silver, but gray. Soft and human. "I can't come closer," he said, his voice low, carried across the water. "Yes, you can. I almost hurt you," he said. "That night, I felt it, the hunger. I would have taken everything good left in me if you hadn't stopped me." Tears burned her eyes. "Then let me help you now. You don't have to do this alone." He shook his head. "I'm not the same. The curse doesn't vanish. It sleeps. And if I stay near you, it will wake again. Ryan, please." "I made my choice that night," he said softly. "You need to make yours now." She stepped farther into the water, waves lapping against her knees. "My choice is you." For a long time, neither spoke. The wind moved through the trees, scattering pine needles across the lake. Then Ryan looked down, something breaking in his expression. "I dream of you," he said, "every night. But in those dreams, you're safe. That's how I know they're not real." "Then make this one real," she pleaded. He smiled faintly, that same half-smile she'd seen the first night on the road. "Maybe someday, when the moon stops calling." He turned, walking toward the forest. "Ryan!" she cried. He stopped once more, glancing back over his shoulder. "Keep the pendant," he said. "It'll remind you who you are when you forget." Then he disappeared into the trees. Emily stood there until the light faded, the water cold around her legs. She clutched the pendant so tightly it left a mark on her palm. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the fire until the stars thinned and the dawn bled across the horizon. Then, slowly, she opened the pendant's clasp. Inside, etched into the silver, were 4 words, small, rough, but unmistakably his handwriting. "When the moon breaks." She didn't understand what it meant then. Not until years later. Because years later, long after she had built a quiet life near the lake, teaching at the small school in town, planting wildflowers where the forest met the water, something strange began to happen. The howls stopped. The air felt lighter. The lake no longer shimmered under the full moon's pull. And one night, when the mist rolled down from the ridge, a man appeared at her door. Same gray eyes. Same voice, low and human. "I told you I'd find you when the moon broke," he said. Her breath caught, and before she could speak, he added, "It broke the day I stopped fearing what I was, and started remembering who you made me." Tears filled her eyes as she reached for him. "Ryan!" He took her hand, pressing it to his chest. His heartbeat was steady. "No more running," he whispered, and under the first sunrise of spring, she realized he was right. The curse had never been the wolf. It had been the fear. Now, at last, both were free. The end.